It finally happened. NASCAR issued the hardest penalty and suspension of the next-gen era and one of the heftiest penalties that a team needs to pay. As SHR, we'll have a lot to talk about this topic with its drivers. The number 14 car of Briscoe was found guilty of breaching one of the most sacred rules in the sport, and it didn't go down well for him and the team. How will this affect their future championship hopes? And is it all over before it properly began before SHR after the impact of the NASCAR's penalty? This video has all of the answers and many more, so make sure you stay tuned until the very end of it. On Wednesday, NASCAR announced that the number 14 car of Chase Briscoe, the SHR driver, has received an L3 level penalty after the team was discovered to be using counterfeit parts. If you are a close fan of the sport and know more about the penalties it issues, you'd know that a penalty of this kind is one that's being dished out very rarely, and it has an enormous impact on the team's ability to successfully recover from it and be competitive again. And as all things stand, Chase Briscoe and his team won't be exempt from this unwritten rule, as the driver has seen a massive hit in the championship. According to the vice president of NASCAR, Elton Sawyer, inspectors found an engine panel NACA duct in Briscoe's car that was not in compliance with the sports rulebook. Ultimately, SHR were found guilty of not being in compliance with the sacred book of the sport, more precisely, with multiple sections of it, as the most vivid ones were in the section 13.1 CNF, which stands for the Overall Assembled Vehicle Rules, 14.6.A for the underwing, and 14.6.3b for the underwing as well. So due to the crime that Briscoe's team has committed, the SHR driver has been penalized by being docked 125 driver points, and the same amount has been deducted from the team owner points as well. But it doesn't end here. Furthermore, the team was also docked 25 playoff points, and the crew chief John Klausmeier was suspended for the next 6 Cup Series races and fined $250,000. Although the financial impact is not the largest one this year, given that the fact that Hendrick Motorsports were penalized $400,000 for the Hood Louver scandal, the fact that the $250,000 fine for the crew chief alone is something that stands out as a massive statement from NASCAR. After all, the $400,000 that Hendrick Motorsports had to pay were for the infringements of all 4 drivers, not just one. And if you think about it, this penalty has a much bigger magnitude and influence on how the team would move forward in the championship. Furthermore, the 125 docked points for one single driver is definitely something that has the difference over whether that particular driver will be in the championship contention later in the season. And the fact that the team didn't appeal the penalty and agreed upon it as it is only goes to show that they may have been alerted about the counterfeited part, but tried to go under the radar with it. NASCAR is having a field day with the penalties recently, and it came one day after Elliott was suspended with a 1-race ban after deliberately crashing into Hamlin during the Charlotte Motor Speedway. At least with Elliott's case, NASCAR remained with a high respect for their old penalties, as a similar one was given out to Bubba Wallace for actions that resembled the ones that Elliott did on the track. But the overall impact of the SHR's recent penalty will have a huge say on how the championship will turn out later in the season. Elton Sawyer spoke about the penalty, saying that he is disappointed that a team with the reputation of SHR has been found guilty of such a crime in the sport, as the vice president went on to add, "We would much rather be talking about the phenomenal racing we just had at Charlotte Motor Speedway than penalties. We are the custodians of the garage. I was a little surprised they'd go down this path. With them knowing the severity of the penalty, talking with the race team, they've got some process and procedures within their race shop that they feel they need to button up. Obviously, the team knows what they've done, and it's not going down easily on them, as they now have to face the consequences of their deliberate actions." The chief competition officer, SHR, Greg Zipadelli, admitted as much, and while adding that the team will not appeal, he also said that they had a quality control lapse and a part that never should have been on a car went on the racetrack and ended up on the number 14 car in Charlotte. Could this really be a sincere mistake? Or is the team alerted of what they've done, but understood that if they get caught, then there is no need to make things worse by appealing and making their penalty even more cruel than it is now? That is up for time to answer, but as of now, a very tough period comes ahead for SHR and for NASCAR as well. With the sport struggling to get a hold of everyone this season, and the only reasonable thing to do is dish out severe penalties as a repercussion for their actions. Although, to be fair, Hendrick Motorsports did win their appeal against NASCAR. It still stands as the first L2 penalty issued in a long time as well, and the $400,000 mark was not withdrawn from the penalty, only the driver points. One couldn't help but wonder, does the next-gen car need that much modifying to be competitive, Or are teams just trying to dive bomb with different scenarios that would ultimately turn around and bite them in the back? In an era in which the sport is moving down in a freefall and the team owners are not satisfied with the business model, it's safe to say that new things will be tried out and more liberty will be asked from the sport to introduce in the everyday racing activities. However, NASCAR is showing everyone that they are still the ones that are in charge of the sport, and that they are the ones that are deciding which part can be mounted on the car and be considered legal, even though teams have won appeals against them on similar matters. Elton Sawyer went on to elaborate furthermore how the team owners can exploit the car's strengths and push the car to the limit, but still be in the legal range of the rulebook and the regulations. As he went on to say, last year they were just getting the parts and pieces, getting the cars prepared and getting to the racetrack. Now they've had them for a season, so it's given a lot of time to their engineers, their people back at the shop to think, okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. By taking these cars back to the R&D and taking them down to basically the nuts and bolts, and we will continue to do that, we will get our message across. Now, implementing L3 penalties is never an easy thing to do, because it can always backfire with rebellions and with team owners not agreeing to certain rules of the book. The fact that the SHR went smoothly with it without appealing the penalty has contributed a lot to how this whole scenario turned out. What does it mean for Chase Briscoe? Obviously, the impact is more than massive, and it effectively kills his championship hopes if he doesn't manage to win a race in 2023. Prior to the penalty, Briscoe didn't really show any potential that he'd be a champion at the end of the year, sitting in 17th place in the Cup Series, 4 points behind Alex Bowman. But what's interesting is that the place Bowman holds is the last one for the playoffs. So while he wasn't that competitive for the top spots, he was very close to making it in the playoffs, where anything can happen, and with a little bit of luck, you can be in the top 4 at the end of the year. Sadly, Briscoe is now in 31st place, and the fact that he has an average finish of 18.1, despite 3 top 5 and 4 top 10 finishes, speaks volume about what is coming for him next in the Cup Series Championship. SHR has underperformed as a whole, and if we are to take away Harvick's number 4 performance on the track, and now that the veteran is headed into retirement at the end of the year, this was supposed to be one of Briscoe's most important seasons with the team. With the leadership gone, the number 14 car was supposed to fight for this status and be the leader of the hard times that SHR is currently headed into. Unfortunately, this will have a massive impact on how Briscoe will perform, not just in this season, but in the upcoming seasons as well. And it definitely has the potential to ruin some chemistry between the crew members. It's up to us to wait and see whether Briscoe can manage some wonders under the leadership of his new crew chief for the next 6 races, Mike Bugaravich, but as of now, things aren't looking that bright for the SHR racer and for the team itself.